Our ultimate goal is being balanced, right? Optimal health is balance. Normal isn't optimal. Your labs could be within normal range, but that's not optimal health. Optimal health is when you're balanced and when you're feeling the best. So we really want to have balance within our body and have that homeostasis, everything working together. And we have to focus on gut health. We have to focus on pathways being open because we're targeted from every direction every single day with different toxins. So in order to be balanced, we have to look at more than just hormones, just gut health, just thyroid. We have to look at everything as a whole, our body as a whole. And we can't just treat one symptom. We have to look at it as, an entire being. And I think that's what is so great about functional and holistic medicine, because that's what we do. But once you start looking at it that way, you realize how interconnected everything is.
Your health is shaped by more than symptoms. Through real stories and expert insights, we explore how your genetics, environment, and daily choices affect your well-being. We uncover root causes and share practical tools to help you find the healing you need. Welcome to the Forum Health Integrative Medicine Podcast.
Welcome back to the Integrative Medicine Podcast. I'm Amanda, and today we're continuing a conversation that so many women tell me they need. What really happens between our mid-30s and perimenopause, and how do we move through it with confidence? Today, I'm joined again by Alicia Barkholtz, our nurse practitioner. In our last episode, we named that gray zone. You're still cycling, but sleep shifts, mood and anxiety feel different, weight changes show up, and you're wondering, is this perimenopause? So today we'll break it down simply, what perimenopause actually is and how you can have regular periods and still have symptoms, why progesterone often dips first, and what that means for sleep and anxiety, how to time labs for real insight, think days 19 through 21, and when to look at cortisol, the unglamorous but essential side of detox and gut health, from bowel regularity to magnesium and DIM, and why stress and sleep can amplify everything, and what to do about those 2 to 4 a.m. wake ups. Most importantly, you'll hear how to personalize your support so you're not dismissed by normal ranges and you have a plan that fits your life. If you're in your 30s or 40s and you've started to feel off, this one's for you. Welcome back to the Integrative Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda, and we've got Alicia back with us today. Alicia, thank you so much for being here. I so enjoyed our last conversation where we kind of talked about that hormonal gray zone between fertile years and perimenopause, where women who are getting into like their mid 30s, that like 32, maybe 30 to 36, 37 range, where there's this gray zone that's not really talked about. There's the fertile years and there's perimenopause, but there's another shift that happens in there. And I kind of want to hone in today and continue our conversation and really talk about what's happening in the woman's body as we go from that mid 30s premenopause stage and transition into perimenopause, and what that transition feels like and what to look out for when you are starting to enter perimenopause, because that looks really different for women also, depending on their resilience, their stress, their hormones and stuff like that. Their lifestyle can have a big impact in that as well. So Alicia, let's kind of just start there. Like, what is perimenopause in general?
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks for having me again. I'm super excited to dive into this discussion. So, perimenopause, by definition, is the interim between a woman's fertile years and menopause, where hormones start to decline and they start to kind of have different irregularities and different symptoms. That's kind of like a generalized definition of that. So perimenopause is really where women start to see those big shifts, right? You might start to see some hot flashes and night sweats that you've never had before. Your sleep might start to decline. You start to gaining weight around the midsection. You haven't changed a single thing. Those are probably some of the biggest ones that I hear. And a lot of times for women, they feel like it kind of comes out of the blue. Like they haven't changed anything and all of a sudden, they start to have all of these symptoms, but they're still cycling regular. So they're still having a period every month. So they're like, I can't be in menopause. Like I'm still cycling. I'm not irregular yet. And that's where we get into that perimenopause, where we're menopause. So we can still be cycling normal, but we're starting to have some of these symptoms. And the reason for those symptoms is we start to just have a very slow decline in the production of our hormones from our ovaries. So again, like we kind of talked about at the last episode, we go through a life cycle. Women go through a life cycle in their reproductive organ. And you have, where you're producing all of the hormones and slowly it will start to decline, but it's very slow. And for some women, it can be faster than others. Perimenopause can last many years for some women and it can go kind of quickly for others. And I think when we talk about that gray area that you were talking about in, the mid to late 30s, which you may not be considered perimenopause yet because you haven't had such a significant decline in hormones yet, but we do start to see some of that slow decline. So you might notice your sleep is not as great. You might not have as much energy as you did before. And that's all a hormonal shift of your body just slowly working into like that perimenopause and menopausal state.
Great. I think that's important. So we start seeing this slow decline. It's really our ovaries
Mhm.
is our organ in women that starts to slowly decline. It's the hormone production from the ovaries that's starting to decline, and that can look slow or fast depending on which person you're looking at. And it doesn't mean that you're not cycling. You can still be cycling, but you start to
Mhm.
experience the symptoms of
Mhm.
menopause, which menopause is when we're done cycling. And so we might start experiencing weight gain or stubborn weight resistance, sleep issues, sleep disturbances, which then, if you're waking up fatigued or tired, your stress resilience is also starting to decline a little bit because when we sleep, that's when our bodies repair itself, right? And we're seeing that slow decline of the hormones. So, what hormones does the ovary produce for a
Mhm.
woman?
So your ovaries are going to produce estrogen and progesterone. Those are the main ones. You get testosterone produced somewhere else. But the testosterone does play a role in, when the ovaries stop producing estrogen and progesterone, we do see a decline in testosterone as well. But your ovaries are mainly producing the estrogen and progesterone. And again, we have to remember that estrogen and progesterone are a yin and a yang. They have to be balanced in order for us to feel optimal. So generally, what we see is a decline in progesterone first. So progesterone, again, is that calming hormone. So it's going to help with sleep. So a lot of times when women are complaining of sleep disturbances, it is because of that slow decline. If your estrogen is not declining as fast as your progesterone, then we can see estrogen dominance kind of come to the forefront where we might see heavier periods all of a sudden. We might see more cramping. Again, that
Mm,
weight gain, as we get a little bit further in, maybe the hot flashes and the night sweats and things like that. That's from sometimes an overdominance of estrogen. And so again,
okay.
it's really important to look at that and see, okay, which one is starting to decline? And again, it's going to be different for every woman. But if you notice that my sleep isn't as great and now I'm starting to have these other symptoms, it most likely is because that estrogen is still kind of dominating and isn't declining as fast as your progesterone.
Got it. Yeah. So I know I'm personally on progesterone right now, and I
Mhm.
probably should be on some sort of like an estrogen type of like a detox support just to make sure I don't have estrogen dominance, or at least I know that my body's clearing it when I know my progesterone is declining. For me and my provider, we test every 3 months to make sure that my dosing on the progesterone, I'm also on a topical testosterone to make sure that those are still in balance with my estrogen and stuff like that. So I know that there's this importance of if you are considering bioidentical hormones for support for perimenopause, what you just said was estrogen and progesterone start to decline, but they need to be in balance. And typically they're not declining in combination with each other. It's progesterone first. So a woman's more likely when entering into this perimenopause state that they're going to have lower imbalanced levels of estrogen and progesterone, more specifically the progesterone side of things. That's not to say everybody is going to be that way, but generally speaking, that's what happens kind of first. And
Mhm.
so if you are thinking about bioidentical hormones, or can you maybe tell me your approach when a woman who is experiencing weight gain, sleep issues, hot flashes. They're still cycling. You have this inkling that they could be entering into like the perimenopause state. What does that treatment plan look like for you and your patients? I know it's varied and unique depending on who the person is, but in general, what's your approach?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, getting a good set of labs is important. And generally, we really like to check on days 19, 20, or 21 of your cycle. So day one being the first day of bleeding. If we check on days 19, 20, or 21, it gives us really the best look at kind of what your hormones are doing and how they're fluctuating. But then really, it's kind of the same treatment plan that you're on is really, really generally supplementing the progesterone and then making sure that those pathways are open for estrogen. And but there's really quite simple. One of the biggest things is making sure that you're having bowel movements and that GI system is open. That's how we get rid of some estrogen is through bowel movements and things like that. So a lot of times if women are super constipated, they're going, every 3 or 4 days, like we will have a buildup of estrogen there. And so that's just a really easy way to, get, and obviously gut health is a whole nother topic, but it's just really important to make sure your gut health is in check as well. And then there's two other pathways that we really focus on opening up. One of them, magnesium, helps to open up that pathway, and the other one is DIM. And DIM is a supplement that has a lot of antioxidants in it. So I believe it's comparable to eating like 5 pounds of broccoli, which nobody's going to eat 5 pounds of broccoli, but you can take a tiny little capsule and that has the same type of properties in it to really help open up those pathways. And it's amazing. I even have some women that maybe their progesterone is still okay, and all we have to do is open up those pathways and all of a sudden they feel so much better because your
Yeah.
body, you don't lose all your estrogen. And that's something that I think is sometimes misconcepted. We're just getting rid of extra. So your body is going to keep what it needs, but it's not going to store extra that it doesn't need that can cause a lot of these symptoms.
That's a good point, is the storage part. So we're talking about opening up pathways, and
Mhm.
hormone balance has so much to do with our detoxification. So we live in this world that there's a lot of things that we can as well as cannot control when it comes to our lifestyle and the different toxins that we're exposed to. Walk outside and breathe the air. If you live in an area that has heavy traffic and stuff like that, you've got
Yep.
pollution from cars and things like that. Like it's a factor we can't control. Food, for the most part, we can control, but we're never going to be perfect. And so we live in this world where our detox systems are constantly challenged because
Mhm.
we have so many things coming at us. We were not designed to have all of these extra toxins in our
Mhm.
lifestyle. A lot of the things like the food additives and herbicides and pesticides and things like that, those are man-made, they're created, and our body doesn't like, we weren't designed to have that kind of an overwhelm. Our bodies were designed to detox things, but probably not in the volume that we're exposed in today, and I
Mhm.
think that's a big piece of hormone imbalances in our society in general today, because when your body produces hormones, like you said, if you have too many, excess estrogen or whatever hormone that is, your body has to clear that. And all toxins pretty much go through a similar pathway. They have to enter into phase one of our liver detox, get manipulated into an intermediary metabolite, and then they have to go into phase two, and that's where it gets excreted. Now, if phase two is backed up, these intermediary metabolites get shuttled into our fat cells for storage. And so when our toxins get shuttled into our fat cells for storage, our fat is there to protect us. That's why our bodies created
Mhm.
fat cells.
Yep.
But they also have, because they're being stored in our cells for protection, that still means that they're having an impact on our body because they weren't cleared properly from our system. So, opening up those detox pathways and being able to allow our livers and our bodies the capacity to clear these from our fat cells and toxins in storage, that allows the body to get back to its equilibrium.
Mhm.
So I think that touching on those detox pathways, DIM, magnesium, and I know a lot of providers in our network will also recommend just like either a quarterly or depending on how often a detox
Yeah.
for just to keep the body cleared. It's kind of like getting an oil change for your car, but for your
Yeah.
body. And then supplementing daily with things that do support
Mhm.
regular detox of hormones and other toxins that are in storage also, because it doesn't stop with
Mhm.
like excess hormones getting
Right.
stored into our bodies. It's all of the toxins we can't process. So I think that's an important the detox pathways and gut health is so important for hormonal balance. And
Mhm.
it's not just about let's get on some bioidentical hormones. It's about
Right.
making sure the body is prepared and ready and the lifestyle is there and all of that.
Right. I mean, our ultimate goal is being balanced, right? Optimal health is balance. And I did a seminar. I went to a seminar and it was all about hormones, but one of the things that he always talked about is normal isn't optimal, right? So your labs could be within normal range, but that's not optimal health. Optimal health is when you're balanced and when you're feeling the best. So we really want to have balance within our body and have that homeostasis, everything working together. And we have to focus on gut health. We have to focus on those pathways being open because, like you said, we're targeted from every direction every single day with different toxins. So, in order to be balanced, we have to look at more than just hormones, just gut health, just thyroid. Like, we have to look at everything as a whole, like our body as a whole. And we can't just
Yep.
treat one symptom. Like, we have to look at it as, an entire being. And I think that's what is so great about functional and holistic medicine, because that's what we do. But once you start looking at it that way, you realize how interconnected everything is. So,
Yeah.
like you said, working on the toxins, that is so huge in hormones, and we don't think about that, right? Like you think, okay, I'm going to start hormone therapy, I'm going to be good. But
Yeah.
if we're not releasing everything, we're not really going to, be optimal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that there's a way, and just talking about this too, you can prepare and even thrive through this transition if you're starting to notice those things.
Hmm.
Supporting hormone metabolism, which is your gut and your liver and
Hmm.
gut health, and even adrenal recovery and protecting your sleep sets you up for an easier transition. And so starting to do some of these detoxes and things to support your liver and your gut, I think is also just a proactive approach. If you're in your mid 30s, doing a quarterly or even an annually, any step makes a difference, I think.
Yeah. And there's even easy, like one of the detoxes that I do when I talk to patients about even like foot soaks, like you use a little Epsom salt and baking soda and it opens up those
Mhm.
pathways and you can pull stuff out through your feet. How easy is it to
I love
sit
that.
and do that and read a book or,
Mhm.
watch an episode of whatever you're doing? I know sometimes like shakes and supplements like scare people, but there are other ways to just do minor detoxes to help open things up. And, a big one is making sure you're having bowel movements. Like our bodies were designed to poop.
Yep.
Like you need to poop. And so just really focusing on that is huge too.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked a little bit about the progesterone and the estrogen, gut detoxing. Let's talk about the role of stress and lifestyle and the environment and how stress and sleep deprivation and even environmental toxins, how that can accelerate hormonal decline.
Hmm. Yeah. So one of the things that I always tell patients is I look at when we're looking at the body holistically and I look at hormones, I think of a triangle. So we have hormones, we have adrenals, and we have thyroid, right? So we got all three and they all interconnect. And if one is off, the odds of them altering the other ones are very, very, very high. So when we think of stress, we think of the adrenal glands. So the adrenal glands are what produces cortisol, it helps to produce DHEA, which are going to be our hormones in response to stress. And a lot of times, I think we only think of stress as being like mental stress, right? We're super stressed with our job, we're stressed with our kids, we're stressed with this, but any stress on our body, so any illness, inflammation, anything chronic going on will also cause a stress response. So it's not just the mental stress that we always feel. And it's so much easier said than done, right? Like, okay, do some meditation and you'll be better. Like that's so much easier said than done. But it really is so important to really reduce stress where you can. Taking 10 minutes away from something that is a stressful situation for you, let your body reset. And like you said, sleep is another really, really important one. Like our bodies were designed to rest. Our bodies were not designed to go 24/7. And I know that there's demanding jobs and there's demanding kids and life just gets so, so busy, but getting optimal sleep is so important. And when we think of hormone wise, a lot of times just adding in progesterone for women, they're like, oh my goodness, I sleep so much better and I feel so much better because you've given your body that time to rest. A lot of times I hear people who wake up between 2 and 4 a.m. and they can't fall back to sleep. And there's a few things we can tweak, and all of a sudden they sleep through that and they just feel so much better because you've given your body that time to rest and relax. So I understand that life is crazy and life is busy, and some days you're going to have more stress than others. But just being, I think, mindful of that and understanding how that plays such a big role in things is super important. And just when you're feeling overstressed, like I feel like anybody who's super stressed can feel it on their health, right? You just don't feel as good.
Yeah.
So you don't sleep as well. You don't feel as good. So being mindful of that and really, giving breaks where breaks are needed is super, super important.
Yeah. I think one thing that I noticed when like I started I started to notice about a year ago my like sleep and also just like
Mhm,
my stress and anxiety just kind of hitting a
mhm,
new level. And I know we kind of talked about that with this gray area, right? This period between fertile and between perimenopause. You might not be experiencing all those symptoms, but like there's certainly a decline that's starting to happen because you're not in your fertile window anymore.
mhm,
But I noticed that my stress resilience and my anxiety kind of started to like take a front seat and
mhm,
really was having an impact on my quality of life also. And that I think can has to do with the progesterone. But do you notice a lot of people having more of that anxiety and anxiousness
mhm,
or even depression and other like possible like things that they were able to manage? I was always
mhm,
able to manage it naturally. But do you
mhm.
notice maybe some like mental health or like
Yeah.
anxiety, whatever happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so frustrating for women because they could handle it before, right? And it's almost like
Yeah,
a defeat because it's like, what did I do differently? And we have to understand that the hormones that were helping us work through that and helping us control that are declining. And again, it's nothing that you or I are doing. That is the natural pathway of our reproductive organs. So recognizing that and being like, okay, like this is what's happening. How can we navigate this? And how can
yeah,
we get back to being optimal and things like that. But absolutely, when we think of progesterone, especially being the calming hormone, it's not just for sleep. It definitely helps with anxiety and just, feeling a lot better. I have a lot of women who just say they don't feel necessarily depressed, but they just don't find as much joy in things. They're like,
yeah,
not depressed. I don't want to sleep all the time, but I just like this just isn't giving me what it used to. Again, it's
yeah,
like that decline in hormones and making sure that we're looking at everything too, not just hormones, like looking at the thyroid, looking at the adrenals, because they all play such a big role and they all affect each other as things start to decline. So we have to, again, look at that body as a whole. But
yeah.
absolutely.
Speaking of other hormones, so we touched briefly on this in the beginning. I mentioned since I am on bioidentical hormones and I'm in this period where I am starting to see that decline in my hormones, I get tested about every three-ish, sometimes 6 months to make sure that my scripts are in alignment with what my body needs. So typically what I look at on a 3-month cadence is basic hormones, but then every like 6 months or so, I add in thyroid,
Mhm.
cortisol, and stuff like that just to make sure that those are in balance also. When what is your preference when you are getting labs done? What do you like look at foundationally for women when they come to you and they're exploring if hormone replacement therapy or if they want to know where they are hormonally in their body?
Mhm. So definitely, the basic platform that I use for hormones is estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, HEA. I look at an FSH and LH, look at all of those. And generally, I start with that because I don't want to overwhelm people too much, right? So we start with
Mhm.
that. I see them. We talk about the things that are wrong, and then I do recommend, we really should look at the thyroid. And I explain to them what other symptoms might be stemming from thyroid dysfunction, or if things might be off with that, because it is going to be a little bit different than what you're noticing from a hormonal standpoint as far as
Yeah.
estrogen and progesterone.
At Forum Health, we uncover the why behind your symptoms. With advanced lab testing, hormone optimization, and cutting edge therapies, we help you heal and perform your best. And now, through shopforumhealth.com, you can access physician grade supplements trusted by our providers, supporting everything from adrenal health to focus and longevity. Learn more at forumhealth.com and explore supplements at shopforumhealth.com.
One of the things I really, really like that we offer too is we offer different kits that people can use. So we can obviously check hormones through a blood test, but we also can check
Mhm.
hormones through saliva testing or a blood spot test, which is where you just prick the tip of your finger and you put blood on a piece of paper and you send it in. But when we look at saliva, then we can really look at a 4-point cortisol level. So then we can see what your cortisol is doing from the moment you wake up, midday, mid afternoon, and at night. And that's super important too, because we want it to be kind of, a steady state throughout the whole day, that your body is able to manage stress and manage what's being thrown at you. But if we're seeing these spikes and dips and things like that in cortisol, that's definitely something that we need to address. So, looking at testing from that way as well. But I think, my approach to medicine, and it might be different for everyone, is we just kind of take one step at a time.
Yeah.
If you're looking for hormones, you feel like this is the problem, let's check those first. But then let's also think about what other things could be
The
contributing to
thyroid
it as
and the stress the adrenals really. So we start with hormones, get a picture of where we are first, then next step of partnership if the patients are ready for that is a discussion and looking at either thyroid or the adrenals or a combination of the
yeah.
both. So you'd said something about cortisol, like
Mhm.
the spikes and all of that stuff. How does that influence hormone? Like the estrogen, the progesterone, why is it so important that we keep the cortisol in this balanced place? How does that play into the other hormones?
So again, when we think of cortisol, it's our stress response hormone, right? So we think of what cortisol does. So if you're getting chased by a bear, you are going to be running for your life. You're all of a sudden going to get all this energy, and other things are going to slow down. You're not going to have your digestive system's going to slow down, because our heart has to be pumping. Blood has to go to our heart and our lungs to get us away from this bear. And then, once we're done, our body then resets and our blood flow goes to everywhere else, and we can calm down. If we have elevated cortisol for a length of time, we're always in that fight or flight response. So our stress hormones are always so high. When our stress hormones are so high, that can contribute to having more of an inflammatory response in the body. And it's just going to put stress on everything, including your ovaries and including your brain and things like that. So, if we see this high state of constant fight or flight, our ovaries are going to take a hit. And it's possible that they will start to decline faster, and they will just be
And
like, I
part of
can't do
that
it anymore.
hit is that your body is focused on the stress response and not
Correct.
on the biological. So when we see these
Mhm.
big ups and downs with stress throughout the day, those big ups, and if they're constant, those big ups basically turn everything off in the body because your body is only focused on stress. And
Mhm.
so if we aren't able to shut that down, then the body's other processes are constantly off or flickering off because you're in this
Mhm.
up and down state. So you're not really repairing, you're not really producing, and it's really just kind of giving the signal to the ovaries and honestly the rest of the body.
Mhm.
We don't have time to focus on this right now.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I think another big thing is like, and I see this with, I used to see this with coaching clients. I used to see this with my own family. where they're like, I'm not stressed, Well, yeah, you might not mentally be stressed. But what I
Yeah.
think a lot of people also need to understand too is that you might not have perceived stress. Maybe you're very like secure and you're happy and you've got a good life. That doesn't mean your body isn't still under stress because
Mhm.
the things that affect your stress, yes, there's the mental and emotional. That is going to have an impact on your stress response. That's the one that we most commonly see people connecting with when we talk about
Mhm.
stress is what is your perceived stress. However, sleep cycle disturbances, that
Mhm.
also initiates the stress response and you might not even know it. And blood sugar dysregulation. If you're having a super, I'll admit this. Today, all I had was a coffee for breakfast. That
Mhm.
did not start my blood sugar off well today. So, I mean, we're all human, but there's so many
Yeah.
other ways that our body sees stress. If you have an underlying infection that you're not even aware of, you could have been bitten by a tick 5 years
Yeah.
ago, 10 years ago, and you could have an underlying low grade, like Lyme sort of
Mhm.
pathogen in your body. I get cold sores. And so, like, I know I've got that underlying in my those
Yeah.
things that are there that you don't see and you might not feel are also causing your stress response
Mhm.
to go. So getting that cortisol test, understanding where you are from a stress resilience standpoint can
Yep.
be really eye-opening because then you're like, "Oh, well, I don't have perceived stress. So where
Mhm.
could this stress be coming from in my body?" And there's certainly ways that we can improve our body's stress resilience with like adaptogens, rhodiola, things like that. Those certainly can help our body's capacity to tolerate stress is a way to supplement it, but really I think the most powerful thing is understanding where that stress is coming from. Is it from sleep? Is it from an infection?
Mhm.
Is it mental and emotional? Where is it blood sugar? Where is the
Yeah.
stress stemming from in the body?
Mhm.
Because that's playing a huge role in overall hormone balance as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, finding the root cause is so important. And I think you hit on some really good points there. One is, our bodies are designed, it's kind of like a hierarchy system, right? Like our heart and our brain, those are like the two big things, and our lungs. Like everything else will take a back seat if that's the only capacity the body has is to focus on those because it is being so overwhelmed with everything else. That's what it's going to do. And your thyroid and your hormones and things and your ovaries are going to take a back seat because your body can only focus on so much at one time. And I think you did a really good job of explaining that. And also, I think a really important point to make too is, I see a lot of patients and they're like, well, this is just like, this is my new normal, right? This is how I felt for years. Like, I don't feel great, but I can still function and things like that. Well, why? Like, why is this your new normal? Like you said, is it an underlying infection? How has your sleep been? Why is your sleep so bad? What can we do to help that? You don't have to have a new normal. Your new normal
Yeah.
doesn't have to be feeling crummy but you're still able to function. So
Yeah.
really focusing on that and yeah, finding the underlying cause and things like that is just so important because again, the body's a whole. We have to look at it from an entire systemic point, not just one specific symptom.
Yeah. I think that as we talk about perimenopause and what it's like to transition into that, I think that a few big things that we touched on today is your gut and your detoxification system play a huge role in that. And there's small things that we can do to be proactive, which is, you know, detoxing and supporting our detox pathways is a really big one. I think that testing and knowing where your hormones are today can be very impactful. It can be very enlightening and empowering, especially if you find out like, hey, progesterone, and not to say it's
Mhm.
an easy win, just, but if you can bioidentical progesterone and get great sleep and then a lot of other things start falling into place, awesome. And I do think that the other one that we talked a lot about today is stress and cortisol and how that
Mhm.
plays a big role. I think another proactive measure is just starting to understand where stress is in your life, be proactive with it, with your mental health, and also knowing where your cortisol is. There's different stages of
Mhm.
adrenal dysfunction, and knowing where you are, because I can't, I can say pretty confidently that a lot of us are in some sort of adrenal dysfunction. We are
Oh,
combated by
abs
toxins just in general initiate the
Mhm.
stress response in the body. Knowing where you are and supporting your adrenals is a really great proactive step that you can take as well.
Yes, 100%. And I think it's, we kind of talked about it in the last episode too. It's really just finding yourself, right? Becoming one with yourself and understanding yourself. And okay, what is a stressor for me? This doesn't work for me, even though it might work for someone else. Like finding what works for you and how to best navigate everything is super important.
Yeah. And I think it's perimenopause is not a single moment. It's a
Mm-mm.
phase, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a multi-year transition for most people leading into menopause, and it's marked by a decline in estrogen and progesterone and a fluctuation in our overall hormones. And there's a lot of things we can do to be proactive about it. And when we're looking for ways to support ourselves and be better and thrive during this time, I think reflecting. A lot of times we're moving through life so quickly. Like I didn't sit and stop and think until it really affected me. And
Mm-hmm.
it was really having a big impact on my life and my productivity, my brain fog. And I think if we stopped and slowed down more often, we would notice those signs a little bit more. I think that
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of great technology out there. I have a ring con on right now that tells us our sleep quality and things like that. And it's one thing to have this information at your fingertips, it's another thing to use it. And it doesn't mean that you have to have like fancy technology or apps either to be able to take stock of where you are and
Yeah.
how you're feeling. If we take 5 minutes, even once a month, to be like, how did I sleep this month?
Yeah.
How did I feel this month? And if we were able to do that more proactively with ourselves, I think that we would get ahead of this a lot sooner.
Mhm.
And that's why I love this conversation is I hope any of the women and or men listeners out there just start checking in with themselves and saying,
Mhm.
how do I feel this today? How is that different from last month, last year, the last 6 months? Are there things that you're noticing, patterns that you're noticing that you can catch ahead of time? Are you feeling a little bit more tired? Are you not keeping up with the kids as much as you want? Are you not sleeping as well during the night? Did you used to wake up and just get going right away? Or, just taking stock in how's your energy? How's your life? How is your joy and your passion in life? And it gets
Mhm.
so easy for us to keep moving, 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 moving so quickly that we lose checking in with ourselves, especially women, because we're always so go, go, go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, with this gray area, getting into perimenopause, a lot of time, this is like one of those gray areas that I don't know if we have a ton of support as women in the traditional system when we are starting to go through this. What do you think conventional or traditional medicine, if somebody is going to their OB or their PCP, why do you think that I'm not going to say they get dismissed because I don't think that either, but what do you think the big miss is from a
Mhm.
conventional or traditional standpoint when people kind of go in or a woman goes in and says, "I'm really just not feeling good," and but your hormones look okay.
Mhm. I think the miss is that this is what your body does, right? We know that, and we know that that can't be changed. And so I think the misconception is that there's nothing we can do. This is normal. This is normal for you to start losing sleep because your hormones are declining. That's normal. That's what's supposed to happen. Once you get past those fertile years, you get into that transitional stage, perimenopause and menopause. I think we get so fixated on this is normal And this is what's supposed to happen, that we miss the thought of there's things that we can do to help that transition. And I think that that's the biggest miss, is that this is normal. This is what's supposed to happen. Everything else looks fine. Like, you're good to go. Just, work through those symptoms on your own. Where when we look at it from this way, it's okay. Yeah, that is how it's supposed to happen. We can't do anything to change it, but there's so much that we can do to support you along the way and help
Yeah.
you transition and still feel optimal.
I think one thing you said was symptoms. Like, I think that in the more conventional setting, labs are what rule
Yes.
the they just rule, right? But your
Mhm.
estrogen and your progesterone look like they're in a good spot, where they can be within that normal range if we're entering into perimenopause. And yes, that's what the body does, but it doesn't mean we have to get through those symptoms on our own. And I think that's where we differ a little bit more, or a lot a bit
Mhm.
more than
Yeah.
your conventional or your traditional, is that, yep, you're going through perimenopause or menopause or whatever. And we still listen to the symptoms. And it's not a, well, your labs are within conventional range. So there's nothing we can do, which is,
Yeah.
from our perspective, there's so much we can do to
Yes.
alleviate those symptoms and create a more vibrant and thriving life. I don't think that we don't have to live with
Yeah.
fatigue and night sweats and poor sleep. There's
Yes.
a
And I
lot we
think
can do.
a really good example of that is just when we look at progesterone, and I think the reference range is like 2 to like 20 or something like that. And generally, I found through research and reading and things like that, women feel really good around that 10 mark, right? But you could be at a 3 and you're going to be normal. And it's not based on your labs, is not going to show that you need supplementation, but your sleep is terrible, your anxiety is worse, and all of a sudden we bump you back up to 10, which is still in that normal range. Like, we're not throwing you off the other way. That's not, when you come and do this type of therapy and things like that, we're not throwing you overboard and getting you much higher than normal. We're just keeping you in that reference range, just maybe a little bit better and a little bit more optimal. But it's crazy what even a bump from 3 to a 10 can do for women, but still within that reference range, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, am so glad that we got to jump on and continue our conversation. I know that this is such a big, powerful area. I know I'm learning a lot too, because it's my phase of life that I'm kind
Yeah.
of in. And I'm just so grateful that I get to speak with providers like you and pick your brain about all of these things. Alicia, I want to end on, what do you wish every woman knew about this stage?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I think that the number one thing is you're not alone, right? Again, this is normal, right? So you're not, it's not you. You're not losing this battle, right? This is normal.
Yeah,
This is what's supposed to happen. You're not alone. Everyone goes through it in one way or another. No, it's not going to be the same. Every woman is going to be different. And every woman is going to have symptoms a little bit differently, but this is normal. So don't beat yourself up about, oh my gosh, like, I can't sleep now. My anxiety is worse. Like, what am I doing wrong? You're not doing anything wrong. We have to recognize that this is normal, but there are things that we can do. So, just looking within and being like, okay, what changed? When did this change? Not my outside world didn't change. My diet didn't change. I didn't change anything. So what internally could have changed? And I think that
right.
that's super important to focus on.
Absolutely. The transition from your mid is to perimenopause doesn't have to feel confusing or
Mhm.
chaotic. It's your body evolving. And when you understand what's happening, you can work with it and not against it. Supporting your hormones, your sleep, your nutrition, your gut, and stress all lays the foundation for vibrant energy, balanced mood, and strong health for decades to come. So there's a lot we can do. And I'm so grateful that we had this, because I think it gives a lot of really good takeaways on what people can do. Alicia, thank you for helping us demystify this stage of life so more women can experience this with vibrancy and more awareness and understand what they can do to proactively enter this stage of life. So, to everyone listening, if you're in your 30s or your 40s and you've started to notice changes in your mood, your energy, or your cycles, not just know this, you're not alone and it's not all in your head. There are answers and there's also support out there for you as well. You can connect with Alicia and other Forum Health providers for personalized hormone and integrative care, both in person and virtually. So if you found this episode helpful, please share it with a friend or a loved one because every woman deserves to feel informed and empowered through her hormonal journey, which never ends. Does not end for us ever. So, all right, Alicia, any final thoughts for our listeners today?
One of the things that I always tell my patients, every single one of them, is you know your body best. And sometimes we really have to advocate for yourself. So, even if your labs are showing one thing and you're still feeling this way, like keep pushing because you know your body best. And I always tell women, I'm going to base my treatment off of how you feel, not necessarily what's on paper. So really just keep that in mind. Like keep fighting if you have to, because you know your body best and you know where you want to feel.
Yes. Thank you so much, Alicia.
Thank
I
you.
will catch you next time. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thank you for joining us on the Forum Health Integrative Medicine podcast. Each episode, we help you understand your health from every angle and inspire your lifelong wellness journey. Follow the show, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a review, and take the next step toward feeling your best at forumhealth.com.